So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
A German officer, a Nazi officer who captured 2 Scotch commandos during the Second World War. And he brought them into the room and he said, I am going to interrogate you and you are going to tell me everything I want to know. You'll be getting nothing out of us, you dirty rotten Hun. He says, we will see. 6'4", a big Scottish fellow, into the interrogation room. Close the door. And the other fellow, he's listening what's happening. And this is what went on. How did you come here? Did you come here by submarine? Did you come here by rubber dinghy? Were you dropped by parachute? How many are with you in your squad? Where's your radio transmitter? Will you stop hitting me while I'm trying to interrogate you?
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, July the 16th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now the headlines for Wednesday, July the 16th. Breaking. Passed. Vice President J.D. Vance breaks the tie. The $9 billion Doge cuts package advances. NPR, PBS, USAID on the chopping block. 3 Republican no's. McConnell, Collins, Murkowski. Unhinged. Democrat Senator Cory Booker just called President Donald Trump's nominee to be UN Ambassador Mike Waltz a coward. Border apprehensions hit historic low under President Trump. Aiming to give Trump backup, second Republican enters swing state race for Democrat-held Senate seat. Breaking. Senator Ted Cruz has formally filed his bill to label the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. The One Big Beautiful Bill is the first real welfare reform in a generation. Barack Obama bashed on The View. Co-hosts rip into his advice for Democrats. President Trump stated that he has no current plans to meet Pope Leo XIV, though he expressed interest in doing so in the future. The Department of Justice has turned its attention to the Democrats. The Trump hater is now a Trump lover. The co-founder of Home Depot, who did not want to vote for President Trump, is shocking the business world. Republican lawmakers to introduce bill to repeal largest teachers union's federal charter. And those are the headlines for Wednesday, July the 16th. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the political corner.
And the president looks over at me, puts the foreign leader on mute and says, "This is not going very well," and he presses the red button. And my eyes get really big, and I'm like, Mr. President, what just happened? And he looks at me and he goes, nuclear. Nuclear. And 2 minutes later, a guy walks in with a Diet Coke, and he looks back at me and he says, it wasn't nuclear, it's just the Diet Coke button. And that's...
And that was the Political Corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Patriotic Short.
Hickok 45 here. How hard one bullet hits or one cartridge hits over another? I'm going to start with 22. We're going to move right on up. 380. Now we move up to 9 millimeter. Now 40. 357 SIG. Now we're up to the 45. And then the Big 10.
And that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, motivation.
I was never the strongest guy. I'm not the fastest guy. Not the smartest guy. But I will work, and I will work hard. I will be up when my competitor's asleep. I will be up when my enemy is curled up in bed. I will be up getting after it, and I recommend that you do the same.
People always say, you gotta love the work. You gotta love what you do. You don't have to love what you do. You gotta be fucking addicted to what you do. You gotta be addicted to winning. You cannot work short hours. You gotta work long hours. You gotta work smarter, and you gotta work fucking harder. It's the work that you put in, the time and effort, the dedication, the hours that nobody else saw in, the sacrifices. You have to be disciplined. You have to be obsessive. You have to be addicted to the result.
At the end of the day, the person that will surrender is the person that didn't work as hard as the other person. You got to work harder than the other person. So just when you felt like you did that last rep and your muscles are saying, I can't do no more reps, you said, yeah, you got to do one more. Because right now, while you quitting, you might be doing 5 more. While you quitting and giving up, while you saying, all right, I did enough, it's time to rest, he might just be getting his zone.
If you want to be great, you want to be the baddest motherfucker ever at what you do, you're going to be misunderstood by everybody because you're going to be so fucking obsessed and so driven to get there. That's what it takes. It takes every second of your fucking life. Anybody says balance? Yeah, balance is important for a lot of fucking people. But if you want to fucking go to that edge where people do not like you, don't understand you, you're in that spot of obsession and drive.
To be the best in the world at what you do, you have to be unbalanced to find every bit of energy and strength that you have to pull it off.
I do things to separate myself from everybody. The passion that I have when I speak, the grind that I have when I do what I do. What are you going to do to separate yourself?
If you ain't got more heart than me, if you ain't been working harder than me, if you ain't sacrificed more than me, I'm going to destroy you. And I'm not retreating. I'm not running. I don't care what they say on paper. I don't care how many games you won. We live by this and we die by this. We don't retreat.
You're not giving 120. You're giving 70. You're giving 60. And you want with these people who's giving sweat, who's giving blood, who's giving tears. You want what they paid for, and it ain't free. It has everything to do with what time you wake up. It has everything to do with how you eat. It has everything to do with how you work out, how you prepare. It has every single thing to do with how you think. And when you want it as bad as you want to breathe says, I'm willing to make any sacrifice. I'm willing to go through any pain. I'm willing to go through any suffering. I'm willing to go through whatever it takes. So when I get in there and it's me and him one-on-one, then I guarantee you at the end of it, I won't be the one that surrenders. And if you're going to be the best, the cream of the crop, if you're going to be the apex, you got to be it. It has to consume you. You can't get out of something that you're not willing to put into it. You have to put your everything, your mind, your energy, your effort, your discipline. Nothing is going to jump out the fire. If you don't throw something in there, it's not going to happen.
You got to learn how not to give up or how not to give in. You got to understand that greatness is within you. And you got to pull it out. You got to climb every mountain. You got to cry if you got to. But whatever you do, you cannot give up. You cannot give in. Nobody ever said it would be easy. I know greatness is within you, and you got what it takes.
I don't care what it costs. I will do whatever it takes to win.
I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, and I will succeed.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. And now, meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Daily Stoic.
Give people the benefit of the doubt. Everything turns on your assumptions about it, and that's on you. You can pluck out the hasty judgment at will, and like steering a ship around the point, you will find calm seas, fair weather, and a safe port. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 12.22.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency, Bishop Robert Barron.
Everything around me, whatever exists, is already the gift of God. That's what creation means. God is the one who brought the whole of finitude into being. This world is not just dumbly there. It's there as a result of God's initiative, of God's grace. More to it, everything in me. So I'm seeking God with my mind and my will and my passions and so on. Well, where did my mind and will and passions come from? It's not like I just happen to have them and now God's out there and boy, I'm going to make my way to impress God. No, I'm the contrary. My mind, my will, my energy, my passion, everything in me is always already the gift of God.
And that was His Excellency, Bishop Robert Barron. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, if capitalism had never existed, any honest humanitarian should have been struggling to invent it. But when you see men struggling to evade its existence, to misrepresent its nature, and to destroy its last remnants, you may be sure that whatever their motives, love for man is not one of them. Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter Theory and Practice from the book Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, psychopathy.
They're Machiavellian. So what does that mean? It means that their use of language is subordinated to their demand for hedonistic gratification and power. So like you and I, in principle, we hope, we're trying to pursue a thread of conversation that leads to further development, let's say, for us and for the audience. But I could easily be in here thinking, okay, what the hell do I have to tell Joe to increase my social media status? Right? And to play this situation as a game to enhance my own status or to further my selfish desires. That's Machiavellian. That was the dark triad. And what further investigation revealed that you had to add an additional dimension to that to fully flesh out the picture.
And that was psychopathy. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little bit of Maria and then Stu.
NFL contract. We graduated high school together in our hometown is so
awesome. Luke.
Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Adam Johnson, Emily Sturge, and Luke Ball. We'll have more tomorrow. Join us tomorrow morning right here. Varney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
Congratulations, Adam Johnson.
Yes. From Stuart.
Thank you. Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. Here it is, the latest on inflation. Wall Street poring over the numbers to figure out what they mean for interest rates and the Federal Reserve. So here we go. In June, producer prices, that is business costs, did not go up. The index went unchanged. And in the last year, they've gone up 2.3%, less than expected. Therefore, inflation at the producer level is softening. We'll let the analysts debate what that means for the Fed. The earlier reaction shows interest rates edging lower. Look at this. The 10-year Treasury yielding 4.48%. That's below 4.5%. At the 2-year, well below the 4% level, you're at 3.95. As for stocks, plenty of green. The Dow Industrial is up maybe 140 points at the opening bell. Minor gains for the S&P and the Nasdaq. Bitcoin, that's still below its record. The current quote is 118.6. Politics. Witness the power of Trump. Last night, one of those crypto bills, the 3 crypto bills, went down to defeat. There were 12 no votes. Trump called them up and convinced 11 of them to say yes. Trump's running the show. Those crypto bills will go forward. Next, the Epstein files. Speaker Mike Johnson has called for full disclosure. So have some in the MAGA base. Now the president appears to be bending a little. He's urging the Justice Department to release all credible information, his words. Zoran Mamdani is spreading his socialist anti-Israel message. He just sat down to breakfast with AOC in Washington, D.C. He's gathering support among congressional Democrats. Tuesday, in New York, he met top business executives. He was asked about his use of the expression, globalize the intifada. Now he says he would discourage that language, but not the idea behind it. On the show today, the surge in violence against ICE agents. The authorities have arrested a former Marine reservist. He's charged with 3 counts of attempted murder after he allegedly fired on federal officials at a migrant detention center in Texas. The Justice Department says there's been an 830% increase in assaults. They want politicians on both sides to reject the violence. Nothing yet from the Democrats. Wednesday, July 16th, 2025, Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was Stuart Varney, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. So now this is a show on Fox. I forget the name of it. And they're going to talk about AI briefly, and I want to make a comment about it.
Should we be concerned? Kids are using AI chatbots for emotional support and companionship. Adam, this is right up your alley. As a friendless person, I know, it's sad. But a third of the kids feel like chatbots are their friends because they often don't have other people to talk to. What does this say about society and your really, really silly sweater?
So, what does it say about society? Nothing. What it says is about liberal parents. Remember, liberal parents treat their kids as though they're sovereign. So, of course, they don't have anybody to talk to. They're treated like they're hotel guests. Conservative parents don't have this problem. They don't have kids that need chat GBT or whatever it's called for a friend, because conservative parents, the whole family sits down at the dinner table at 5 o'clock, and that's mandatory. And you put your phones away, and you don't watch TV, and you talk about how your day was and whatever else is going on. So again, he's missing the point here. It's not kids. It's not our kids. It's their kids. It is liberal children from liberal parents who think that their children are sovereign, that are going ahead and turning to AI, ChatGPT, etc. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In One Thing is True mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Jeffrey Mead.
The California exit, by the way, complete bullshit now. The last 2 years, we've seen significant growth in California's population.
No, it's not complete bullshit. And California hasn't seen significant growth over the past 2 years. It's seen modest growth over the past 2 years. This is so intellectually dishonest. So I'm going to break down why he's being intellectually dishonest, and then I'm going to show how he's trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. It's about narrative control. For one, over those past 2 years, California was actually lagging behind the national average in population increase. Two, he's painting this narrative as if California is just growing. The number one drivers of their growth are births from people who live in California and international migrants. People either wanting paperwork or job opportunities or both. So when people are talking about the California exodus, they're talking about net domestic migration, meaning people in America leaving California and going to other states within this country. From 2023 to 2024, California's net domestic migration was negative 239,575, meaning there were 239,000 more people that left California domestically than came into California from other states. For context, in 2023 and 2024, Texas had a positive net migration of 85,267 people. So from 2023 to 2024, I'm going to break down how California's population increased. Net international migration, you had 134,370 people internationally migrate to the state of California. A natural increase of 110,466. This just means that there was 110,000 more births than there were deaths. And again, their net domestic migration was negative 239,575, meaning that many more U.S. residents were leaving California to go to other states than leaving other states to go to California. So without international migration, California would have been at a net loss in population. And this is what irritates me, because Newsom knows the full metrics of his administration, but he selectively portrays these positives to paint a certain picture and get people to believe a certain thing. Yes, there is a California exodus. It's not a myth. He's just trying to lie and cover that up to control people's perception again.
And that was Jeffrey Mead on Instagram. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Giorgia Maloney.
Fate un atto d'amore nei confronti della vostra patria, nei confronti del vostro popolo. E lo fate con una consapevolezza che rende questo gesto molto più significativo. Perché voi giurate di difendere la nazione sapendo che tutto quello che farete nel corso della vostra carriera, che chiaramente auguro a tutti essere carica di soddisfazioni, rimarrà sconosciuto ai più. Cioè voi scegliete di giurare di servire la nazione ben sapendo che tutte le persone la cui vita salverete o migliorerete non potranno dirvi grazie, non vi diranno grazie, semplicemente perché non sapranno che lo avete fatto voi. E ci vuole uno straordinario amore per essere pronti a sacrificare tutto senza potersi aspettare neanche un grazie in cambio. Questa sera.
And that was Thank you, and now Sanchez.
Además de vecindad y cercanía, España y Mauritania comparten intereses en materia de seguridad, de desarrollo, de prosperidad para nuestros pueblos, y esa es la razón de ser de esta reunión de alto nivel, que es muy relevante por tres razones fundamentales que me gustaría compartir con todos ustedes. En primer lugar, por la riqueza de todos los temas que hemos tratado, además de la tradicional colaboración en materia pesquera y de cooperación. La cooperación española está presente en Mauritania desde hace 3 décadas. Nuestra relación bilateral está adquiriendo una relevancia creciente en otros muchos ámbitos, como es el económico, el empresarial, el migratorio, el securitario, pero también otros terrenos como es, por ejemplo, el cultural. La reciente apertura de una extensión del Instituto Cervantes en Nuakchot es el mejor ejemplo de ello y refleja los estrechos vínculos que siempre han existido, en especial entre Mauritania y una parte muy querida de España como son las...
And that was Sanchez. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now more Stu.
Well, you know, we talk a lot about New York and the mayoral election coming up. That's where we're playing Frank Sinatra. New York, New York. On a cloudy, a rather dull day, actually. Good morning, everyone. 10 o'clock Eastern. To the money, we're looking at a Dow that's now up only 40 points. It had been up much more than that. And the Nasdaq's turned south. It's down at 46. So a mixed picture emerging on Wall Street. The 10-year Treasury yield, that is coming in now at 4.45%. Bitcoin hovering around 118,000 all day. Still there, 118.7. That's the markets. And now this. We spend a lot of time on Zoran Mamdani, and so we should. He's setting the Democrat Party on fire. He's a socialist. He's anti-Israel. Okay, that's an understatement. And he is very likely to be the next mayor of New York City. He's busy spreading his message and gathering support. He's an insurgent who suddenly burst on the scene. AOC is now hosting a private breakfast for him in Washington. He's meeting the left, spreading the word to national Democrats. Imagine what a challenge that is to the establishment. Mamdani has juice. Senators Schumer and Gillibrand and Governor Hochul do not. What on earth will they do if, as is likely, he wins? Tuesday, he took questions from some of New York's top business executives. They are understandably nervous about a socialist running the show. They're also nervous about Mamdani's support for Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that launched the October 7th massacre of Jews. Albert Bourla, he's the CEO of Pfizer and himself the son of Holocaust survivors. He asked Mamdani about his use of the expression, globalize the intifada. Mamdani said he would discourage the use of those words, but not the idea behind them. Not a word about the suicide bombings that were a feature of the Intifada. This morning, New York Times columnist Bret Stephens writes about the political dilemma Mamdani brings with him. He says socialism may be okay in some parts of our big cities, but nationally it makes Democrats unelectable. He writes, a Mamdani mayoralty would be a political gift to the Republicans that keeps on giving. President Trump, okay, he would love to see him win. He would go after Mamdani Democrats for years to come. Here's my bottom line, and I've said it many times. Mamdani will win, and he will further degrade an already suffering city. That should bring an end to the sad experiment in big city leftist rule. Second hour of Varney just getting started.
And as far as I'm concerned, I hope Mamdani wins, because he is the punishment that New York City so richly deserves. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Apollo, Chapter 18, Part 2.
2. In 1946, the NACA had sent a young Langley engineer named Walt Williams out to the Mojave Desert to open a facility for testing the X-1, the plane in which Chuck Yeager would break the sound barrier. It was called the High Speed Flight Station, using the Air Force facilities that would later become known as Edwards Air Force Base. On July 30th, 1959, Williams's 40th birthday, Abe Silverstein called Williams to Washington and persuaded him to return to Langley to work for the Space Task Group. On September 15th, Williams reported to Langley as Gilruth's Associate Director for Operations. Williams was indeed the very tough kind of guy that the gentlemanly engineers of Langley needed to deal with the Air Force's brand of bureaucratic infighting. By 1959, Williams was already known in the flight test business as a man who could work, carouse, cuss, or fight as prodigiously as any test pilot at Edwards. He was also tough in the other ways that operations needed. He had the ability to walk up to the problem of putting a man on top of one of these Atlas vehicles, which are really just big metal balloons, and not be cowed by it, said Lunny of Williams. Big metal balloons. The walls of the Atlas were so thin that they would collapse unless the vehicle was pressurized. Williams just walked up and said, "God damn it this and God damn it that," and got everybody saluting and doing what they should do. He was a genius of sorts, Lunny reflected, though if you had to go up against him, he didn't seem like a genius, he seemed like a bull. In those days, he even looked like a bull. Over 200 pounds, a powerful man with a square head, dark, close-cropped hair, and heavy brows. Gene Kranz, who himself would scare a few people in his time, never forgot his first encounter with Williams. It happened in 1960, just a few weeks after Kranz had arrived at the Space Task Group. Kranz had been sent over to brief Williams on some work he'd been doing. Kranz, who knew Williams only by reputation, got there early and slipped into a seat in Williams's office while another briefing concluded. Williams, who was slouched behind his desk chain-smoking Winston's, looked a little like Broderick Crawford in Highway Patrol, big, rumpled, and knowing. The men briefing Williams were not having a good day. Williams sat behind his desk, scowled at the hapless briefers, and whipsawed them, Krantz remembered. Just cut them up, sliced them off at the ankles, mid-calf, knees, mid-thigh. They went down the tubes and the thing was over. The objects of these attentions put away their papers and filed out of the office, leaving Krantz and Williams alone. Krantz began his report. Walt Williams had a curious habit of appearing to fall asleep in the middle of meetings. Williams himself said that it was a device. "I listen to the guy's voice," he explained. "If the guy's trying to bullshit you or is uncertain, you can hear it in his voice. I don't want to see his bright blue eyes or anything else." Did he ever really fall asleep? There were, after all, reports of the occasional snore. Well, Williams said ambiguously, when people had given him a briefing paper in advance, he didn't bother even listening to the build-up, but waited until the guy got to the good part. Krantz knew nothing of this. After a few minutes, he was getting into his material when he realized that Williams was starting to nod off. His head was slumped on his chest, his eyes were closed. Unbelievable as it seemed, Krantz decided, Williams had gone to sleep. In a one-on-one session with a legend, who you have just seen completely assassinate somebody, what the hell do you do? Krantz would ask later. He decided that the safest course was to pretend nothing had happened and keep on talking. So he did, feeling more confident now that it seemed no one was listening to him. In fact, he was feeling confident enough to sidestep a small issue that he wasn't absolutely sure about. But what the hell, the man was asleep. Williams always kept a roll of Neccomints nearby to soothe his smoker's throat. As Krantz breezed on, Williams's hand reached out, groping slowly for the roll of Neckos. Williams shook out 2 of them, eyes still closed, and chomped on them for a while. And then he proceeded to ask exactly that question that I thought I had skated through very cleanly, Krantz recalled. It was just absolutely intimidating. Williams had that effect on the operations division as a whole. First, he got together with the astronauts, who had been struggling with the design engineers to be treated as pilots, not guinea pigs. Williams had spent his adult life around test pilots and was sympathetic. In July, before being offered the Space Task Group job, Williams read in the newspaper that the astronauts were complaining about not having any planes to fly. The Langley engineers should have known, he remarked to his wife, that you can't have tigers around and not have raw meat for them. Furthermore, it was Williams's view that the astronauts were the most carefully selected people and probably the most talented people in Project Mercury, and it was foolish not to make use of them. From then on, the astronauts were deeply involved in all aspects of the hardware and flight planning. At the same time, Williams conveyed to the astronauts, and made it stick, that in manned spaceflight, there would be a crucial distinction between command and control. The astronaut had control of the spacecraft, but the ground had command of the mission. This would mean a degree of minute-to-minute direction from the ground that had no precedent in flight testing. Williams radically altered the approach to preparing the capsule. No longer, he decided, would the engineers and technicians who made the spacecraft be the sole judges of their own work. An independent corps of inspectors would watch every step and must sign off on it before work could proceed. Williams went down to Hangar S at Cape Canaveral and pulled Joe Bobick off Simpkinson's crew to come up to Langley and inspect the work on the capsule being assembled in the Langley shops. "Hey, they'll throw me out of there," protested Bobick, and he was almost right. But Williams's system stuck and eventually grew into the intricate spacecraft inspection system that Bobick would direct during Apollo. When it came to flight control, Williams took a look at the paper-thin layer of experienced Canadians and the hodgepodge of young American engineers beneath them, and promptly set up classroom instruction using the senior engineers to instruct the neophytes on the details of the Mercury and Redstone systems. How they worked, Williams said, and more importantly, how they didn't work. He began talking about mission rules and countdowns and operational requirements. Most of all, Walt Williams made everybody aware that this was not some abstract engineering exercise. He had at least one astronaut attend every ops meeting. "Look, what you guys have to remember," Williams would say to them, "is that there's going to be a bright, clear morning at the Cape, and that Atlas is going to be sitting on the pad. There's going to be a capsule on top of it, and we're going to put a guy in that thing and light it. This is not a hobby. This is real. This is what we're going to do." To do it, he taught them, would take not just knowledge and good faith, but also a hard-bitten tenacity and self-discipline. Walt Williams became like the father, said Lunny. We were all his boys, and he loved that. He came knowing that an operations organization had to be set up and having a lot of the instincts about what characteristics it should have. Walt encouraged it to happen. But Williams was too busy negotiating with the Air Force and taking care of the preparation of the Atlas launch vehicle to make it happen from day to day in the flight control part of the business, Lunny said. And then this young craft guy came along with a lot of clever technical skills and the charisma to pull it off. Chris made it happen. His unlikely name was Christopher Columbus Craft, Jr. He was named for his father, who had been born in New York City the week that Columbus Circle was dedicated. Chris Jr. was born in 1924 in Phoebus, Virginia, just up the road from Langley. His uncle August had been one of the surveyors who had laid out the original runways at Langley Field back in 1915. A standout baseball player in school, Kraft toyed with the dream of playing pro ball, but he wasn't quite good enough for that, and he was rejected for military service during World War II because of a hand that had been badly burned when he was a child. So, after returning home with his engineering degree from Virginia Polytechnic, Kraft drove down the road from Phoebus to Langley and applied for a job. He reported for work in January 1945 and was assigned to William Hewitt Phillips's Stability and Control branch, where he worked for another young engineer named Chuck Matthews. In later years, Kraft would reminisce about his years under Phillips with a craftsman's pride in his work, but eventually he began to scrape against the edges of the Langley mold. By 1958, Kraft was a quietly frustrated young man with an ulcer. Then that fall, Matthews recruited him into the Space Task Group as his assistant in the new Operations Division. One day, as Matthews remembered it later, Kraft came to him and said, "There needs to be someone in charge of the flights while they're actually going on, and I'd like to be that person." Matthews agreed, and that was how the position of flight director in manned spaceflight was born. After Williams came aboard and Matthews gradually moved into the background, the original Operations Division was split into 3 new divisions: for pre-flight operations, for flight crew operations, and for flight operations. Kraft was made director of flight operations. Ultimately, he would become the embodiment of mission control. Walt Williams would throw out an idea, and Kraft would pick up on it. One of the earliest and most important of these was Williams's notion of mission rules. He said we had to have them, Lunny said. We didn't know what mission rules meant, but we went out and made them up. It was really just about that simple, according to Krantz. Honest to God, I hadn't been on board more than a couple of weeks when they said, "Hey, go down to the Cape and write some mission rules." I said, "What are mission rules?" "Well, if something goes wrong, we want to have some thinking as to what we're going to do about it." I said, "Jesus Christ, I don't even know where the Cape is, much less how to go down there and write mission rules." But it was unquestioned. We'd all muster out and go do it. Krantz and Tech Roberts and Paul Havenstein, a Navy officer seconded to the Space Task Group, flew down to the Cape on one of East Coast Airlines' creaky old planes. They sat out on the porch of a house borrowed from an Air Force officer stationed at Patrick Air Force Base, just south of the Cape, and there they made up mission rules. Walt Williams had brought the notion of mission rules from Edwards, where they were used as a way of preparing the pilot to react correctly in situations where there was no time to think through a problem or in which he might intuitively do the wrong thing. Mission rules for spaceflight were developed to help the controllers decide ahead of time, calmly and deliberately, with plenty of information and time to think, what was to be done in a critical situation. Williams remembered meeting considerable resistance to the notion of mission rules at first. It took table pounding. People argued that they would never know exactly what to expect and that the rules were unlikely to work for a specific situation. "That's not the point," replied Williams. "If you'd worked your way through problems, then when you saw a problem, whether you knew exactly what it was or not, you started recognizing the characteristics of it, and understanding the system, you could work your way out of it." Throughout Mercury and Gemini, mission rules continued to develop, and by the time of Apollo they filled a number of thick books. But over time, the mission rules also took on the elements of a philosophy, or as Lunny liked to think of it, a set of values. It's like being raised by parents in some faith. You get a set of values, and then when you're an adult, you probably live by them most of the time. And it became like that with us. The most generic of all principles was that the crew must be protected from dying. But the principle had to be more sophisticated than protect the crew at all costs. Just as Owen Maynard and Cadwell Johnson constantly had to make trade-offs between different kinds of risks, so the controllers found that it wasn't possible to make decisions simply on the basis of whether a procedure was safe or not. When we first started, Lunny recalled, people would say things like, "Well, the spacecraft's got to be good," before deciding to continue a mission. But what the hell does good mean? Slowly, the Flight Operations Division wended its way toward a subtle and complex style of thinking about this crucial thing called safety. In this process, Kraft became what Krantz and some of the others called the teacher, developing precepts that became the catechism for later generations of flight controllers. The first of Kraft's precepts was simplicity itself. If you don't know what to do, don't do anything. But it was simple as a koan is simple, for flight controllers were trained and conditioned to solve problems. The temptation was for a controller to think that he knew what to do when he really didn't. True wisdom in flight control lay in being able to recognize one's own ignorance. Much of the training of the flight controllers consisted of showing them how they could be fooled. Another of Kraft's precepts was not at all simple. According to Krantz, Kraft always believed that once you accepted the risk of launch, once those engines ignited, you had bought a good portion of the risk associated with that mission. Once you got into orbit, what you wanted to do was exploit the environment you were in. It was really a philosophy of risk versus risk and risk versus gain, which we debated many, many times. For example, during the Gemini 5 mission, there was a risk of losing the fuel cells if the spacecraft remained in orbit. If craft brought the crew home, another crew would have to repeat the mission and accept the comparatively higher risks of the launch phase. The conclusion, according to the craft philosophy, was that although it was risky to use the fuel cells, it was safer in the larger scheme of things to continue the mission than to bring it home with its work uncompleted. If safety before everything was impossible, what then was the guiding principle for deciding to abort a mission? The canon was voluminous, but the unifying tenet was based on the ability to tolerate one more major failure. As Lenny explained it, you will continue flying only if the next thing that happens to you, and it's the worst thing you can think of to couple with the problems you already have, is still survivable. If you thought in those terms, the flight controllers pointed out, a great many of the more specific rules fell into place. Sounds obvious as hell, Lenny added, but it took a little while to figure that out. While these principles of flight control were evolving, two other developments profoundly affected the way that flight operations would be conducted during Apollo. One was a process lasting for years, the other was a single terrifying event.
And that was Chapter 18, Part 2 of Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.